I was invited today to talk about one of our success stories from the Dynamics 365 finance and supply chain management migrations or the implementation projects that we are running. So I've picked one story that I actually found to be quite interesting, and also that goes align well with our main role. So we are here to help our partners to migrate their legacy customers from the on-prem versions of Dynamics AX and 2009 and 2012 to Dynamics 365. So we help our partners migrate customers, and we help partners migrate well first by, of course, the analyzing, doing the best path assessment, but also we actually help them to do the actual migration. And yeah, today I basically picked one of the challenges that we solved while helping one of the partners to upgrade their existing customer. So yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about how to build a successful intercompany integration in Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. And yeah, I haven't introduced myself properly. So my name is Paulius Berezgis, and yeah, I'm coming from Finance and Supply Chain Management team, and I'm Dynamics Finance and Supply Chain Management architect, working at a company for already 10 years. So yeah, let's start about the main topic. So I explained a bit why I actually picked this topic, and yeah, I'll give you a bit more background why this topic is really relevant, and I'll get some technicalities a bit later, but right now let's start from the business side of things. So background, why actually we should integrate those two systems, let's say AX2012, the old system, the old ERP system, on-prem system, and the new greatest and latest Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management cloud system. So as Dynamics partners might be aware, many customers are still running on AX2012 version. So many customers are still on-prem. And many customers are thinking about migrating to Dynamics 365 because end-of-life support is coming on. So it's happening, right? Customers are thinking about migrating, maybe starting the migration already. And when they are thinking how to migrate, usually these customers are quite large because, right, AX customers. So they have business in many countries across Europe, maybe even across the world. And when they are trying and thinking about rolling out Dynamics 365, most likely, from our experiences, they will not be rolling out every single country at once. They're not going to do a big bang because it's going to be too stressful for the organization to do that. So they will be doing phase by phase, company by company, region by region, country by country rollouts, right? Okay, so that's the background, right? So that means that in the project, there will be a period of time when some companies will be on the AX2012, on the on-prem version, and some companies will be on Dynamics 365 version, which already sounds quite complicated, right? Half of my legal, but by saying companies, I mean legal entities, right? Company as once, you know, it's on both systems. But some legal entities, let's say Finland will be on 12, and Sweden will be on Dynamics 365. That might be one of the cases, right? It already sounds quite complicated for the financials and everything. But the fun part is, so AX2012 is known already for quite good intercompany relations. So basically, it allows to post, create and post sales and purchase orders between different legal entities quite easily. You know, you basically buy stuff that your other legal entity owns. Yeah, so you sell stuff that your other legal entity owns, and you can buy stuff into different legal entities, so on. It's quite well automated. Now, what happens when we break that, right? We moved some companies to Dynamics 365, we left some companies on AX12. That means not all companies are in AX12 anymore, and that means those intercompany relations are broken. So that intercompany cannot function in AX12 anymore because Finland just got migrated to Dynamics 365. So what do we do then? Basically, what we did, and actually this is not a one-off case. I have heard these scenarios. So I have done more than 200 assessments of migrations, and I have heard these concerns quite often. So when we are talking with a bigger customer who has global business, this is actually quite a common concern. So for this particular customer, what we actually did is we actually built intermediate intercompany integration to replicate this standard behavior. For other customers, manual work might be, an option. Salespeople from the organization might, work on both systems at once and enter sales orders here and there. But this particular customer, we have 10,000 sales orders per day. So yeah, that was not an option. So we had to build intercompany integration. So that's the background. Now, to talk a bit more about technicalities. So what actually were the requirements, right? So we are building intercompany integration. Cool. How it should look like. So first of all, one of the main requirements was that the system should be integrated in near real time. The inventory was managed by one system. So system, basically AX12 was the owner of inventory. And you cannot sell chairs, let's say in Finland, because Finland is Dynamics 365. So Finland should not be able to sell chairs that are not available in Sweden anymore. So that has to be real-time integration. Another thing is the integration should work exactly the same as normal AX2012 intercompany flow. So that's a normal requirement. Basically, customer did not expect to have a big impact on their daily operations, even though they are working on two systems. The other requirement was quite interesting. They didn't want to have large extra costs of that integration. And I'll get to the cost part a bit later, but basically there are many different ways how you can integrate Dynamics 365. Microsoft has done a really great job. But those ways have quite different cost levels. And the decision that was made and the requirement that was made was actually to have as little impact to costs as possible. And also usability, of course. So as I said, so users should have as little impact as possible from this integration. So should be as much business as usual. The requirement was simple. Basically, we had to integrate sales orders. Sales orders are placed on phone. So basically, customers are phoning in sales clerks and saying, hey, I want to buy this chair and this table and so on. And they have to place sales order in real time in the system while they're on the phone. So they have to have really low impact. So they shouldn't feel that, there's actually some integration going in the background. And yet, for that reason, of course, the performance had to be great. So these were the requirements that we were faced. And yeah, so, okay, cool. We have the task, we have the requirements. So what's the challenge? How hard can it be? So just to give you some understanding, AX2012, it's 10-year-old, well, 11, I think, on-premise ERP system. So it's been released in 2011, 2010 already. So it's quite aged. And yeah, and it's on-premise. So it's all closed off from the newest and greatest stuff that's in cloud. And the other system that we need to integrate with this AX12 is Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, the latest and greatest cloud-hosted ERP system from Microsoft, right? So we have to integrate these two. How hard can it be? Well, it can. So first of all, let's get to the technical challenges here. So first challenge was that systems are running on different places, let's say, right? AX12 is on-prem, it runs somewhere in Sweden in some basement. Azure and Dynamics 365 runs on Azure in Microsoft's cloud, which is isolated. And both of these systems are isolated from one each other because, of course, AX12 is somewhere in the basement and nobody wants to access it from the web. And Azure, well, it's isolated for the Azure users, right? Okay, so that's first challenge. Now, to make those systems talk, we need to make the communication channels secure, of course. That's like a default requirement. So no silly workarounds, no playing with some opening channels to the whole world. Nothing silly like that. Everything must be secure, integrated into the authentication patterns, latest best practice, and so on. Also, another challenge related to that, we need to make AX12 available for Azure. So that's part of the game, right? If you want Azure to talk with Azure, Dynamics 365 to talk with AX12 on-prem, you need to somehow bring AX12 to Azure. So that was another one. And then The inheritance challenge, because the systems are of different, let's say, ages. I wouldn't say centuries, but ages. So of course, the integration technologies do not match between systems. X 2012 was released, 11, 12 years ago. So it has integration technologies. Some, really not many, but they are old. And Dynamics 365, it has the latest and greatest what Microsoft has to offer. And yeah, another challenge, as I mentioned previously, integrations must be near real time. So we are talking about sales orders. So sales clerks are on the call, so they cannot wait, and integration must be fast. And yeah, and the user should not experience any wait time because of that. So this is the challenge that we actually had to face. Yeah, so quite simple, right? Integrate your systems well. It's turned out not really that simple. So what do we actually did? How do we solve this? So we did a lot of analysis. We also talked with Microsoft. So basically every Dynamics 365, at least the larger projects, Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, have a luxury of having fast track team helping them. So fast track team, they provide the different advices. So what we did, we talked with fast track architects, basically with the task that we were facing, together, of course, with the implementation partner that we were working for, and even with the end customer, because end customer has a good IT team. So we talked with the fast track team to get some insights, and based on that, we picked the integration technologies. And yeah, even though it's one integration, we actually had to pick a lot of different integration technologies. So let's go through the list of actually what we decided on, what we picked, and maybe that's going to be useful for you when you have to, build another integration, something similar like that. So to make AX12 available for the Azure, for the world, what we used. So we used Azure Active Directory Application Proxy. Basically, there's a tool in Azure that allows you to expose safely any on-prem application that you have, including AX2012. So you can bring your ancient, well, I don't want to call them ancient, but some legacy systems, maybe even your production system that you have on-prem, you can bring it to Azure to make it available for Azure applications, which is quite cool. Then we had to build efficient APIs, as I was talking, near real time, very low waiting time, so everything has to be quick. So we didn't go OData, which is Microsoft's quite popular right now. We didn't go dual write, so no of these buzzwords. I know they are quite good buzzwords, but when we are talking technical, even Microsoft themselves, they recommend to use custom AF services, so custom services, custom APIs. You build what you need, you don't have any overhead. That's the fastest and most efficient way to build integrations. Also, to make integration, let's say, less time consuming, and to not make Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management users wait, we used some asynchronous code patterns. So one of those is business events. So that's quite popular, the integration technology with Dynamics 365, where basically when something happens in Dynamics 365, the business event is fired, and then users can continue their work as usual. So that's what we used for the expensive operations. And yeah, as I mentioned, to make integration perform, we didn't use OData, we didn't use dual write, we didn't use any of those, let's say, latest and quite popular integration technologies, because we really wanted to keep this integration as slim, as fast as it's technically possible. And yeah, to integrate synchronously between systems, were needed, and I'll get back to the synchronous asynchronous a bit later. But what we actually did, we called directly AX2012 from Dynamics 365, and from AX2012 we called directly Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management. So actually that is possible, even though, however, let's say strange it sounds, it's possible to call one system from another, and it works quite well, as long as you have them both, exposed to Azure. And so to have the most efficient middleware solution, we didn't use Logic apps, we didn't use Power Automate. Again, these are, let's say, low-code approaches that Microsoft suggests, and they are really good technologies. I don't have anything against them, but in our case, we wanted, again, this integration to be as efficient as possible, and we had the luxury of knowing how to build Azure functions. So what we did, we built Azure function, basically to speed things up, to not use Logic apps and Power Automate, because again, this is faster way to do integration than using Logic apps and Power Automate. Again, these technologies also have their place in the whole integrations ecosystem, and they are really great technologies. They make building and maintaining integration simpler. So yeah, but in this case, one of the lessons learned is that we actually had to use Azure functions to make it as efficient as possible. So these are the technologies that are used, and I mentioned, yeah, quite simple integration, right? Well, when we went into that, it actually turned out that it's quite many different things that need to be integrated, and many different technologies need to be picked. So some takeaways. How did we get there? How did we build it, and how did we pick the technologies that we picked, and how did we build integration the way we built it? So general rule, as it always with the software development, define integration flows very clearly. And the important thing about this, and it's really to make mistakes, really easy to make mistakes here, is, you stick to every same pattern everywhere. Now, what we did, we split the integration flows because this is quite complex integration. There's sales order going one way, purchase order going the other way, then there are many messages back and forth till, the invoice is sent to the customer. So there's the warehouse and the inventory reservations and the trucks going out and so on. So many different messages. So what we did, we split these integration flows in small details. And we really did a massive work to talking together with the customer and with the partner that we were working in on identifying which of these flows have to be synchronous, which of the flows can actually users sit and wait, and what can be done in the background. Because most of the things, you really want to do as many things as synchronous as possible, and only make synchronous where it's really needed, because for the synchronous operations, user has to sit and wait. And remember, there's a sales guy who is on the phone. So, because you don't want to really make customer wait. So we really evaluated the different integration flows, and we picked where we need the synchronous integrations, and where we don't, we did asynchronous patterns. And asynchronous patterns, they run in the background. So you place this sales order, you click confirm, and that's it for you. You can make another sales order while the systems do their integration work. So yeah, it's really important to evaluate the patterns and pick the right technology, the right pattern for every single operation that you do in the integration to make it as efficient as possible. And yeah, it's important to plan carefully. As I mentioned, so many integration technologies in Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain Management, and generally in Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, in Azure Stack. There's so many possibilities there. So you really need to plan carefully and, do proper proof of concepting maybe. Do a small proof of concept to figure out what's the best technology for your approach, and go that way, pick the right way only when you have properly done the proof of concepting phases. And yeah, as I mentioned, really easy to get lost. And I think in this implementation that we did, we actually are quite happy with the way that we went. And the customer is also happy, which is the most important thing. Right, so some lessons learned right here. Yeah, so as I mentioned, just to summarize lessons learned. So yeah, really analyze, define the flows, pick the synchronous versus asynchronous, and do some proof of concepting and pick the right technology for the right piece. So that's main lessons learned. And yeah, to wrap it up, so result, what we actually did. So we built it, the integration. It took a couple of months, I believe, for the integration team. But yeah, we built a temporary intercompany integration and AX2012 and Dynamics 365 are talking between each other. So sales guys are placing sales orders in Dynamics 365 in a, let's say, Finnish company. Then they are going to Swedish company, checking if they have available inventory. If they have, they confirm the sales order in Dynamics 365. Then the whole warehouse things are happening in AX12 because AX12 has still the warehouse. And then it reports back the status to Dynamics 365 that, yep, your goods are picked, your goods are sent out. And finally, hey, you received the goods, please, there's your invoice. So all of these flows are working between these systems just almost as seamlessly as they were in the single system. So that's all I had to say, I think, about the topic that I have ready for today. So yeah, any questions?